years, we will have to replace over 30% of the nursing workforce. So I have been in nursing for over 40 years, or right around 40 years, makes me feel really old. And I have been in a nursing leadership role and dealt with staffing and other things for many years. This is not something new to the pandemic. However, the pandemic has exacerbated this situation and is a catalyst for change. So I just want to leave you with a couple of thoughts. The nursing workforce challenges are very complex and cannot be solved independently or in silos. This is a very competitive environment. We have a nursing shortage and everybody's competing for those nurses. However, we have tried to solve them independently, and there are many good initiatives going on, but really in order to solve this challenge, we have to come together and work together. And our employers need help doing this. They're in the business of taking care of patients. And to try to solve these challenges on top of that is very difficult. And that's one of the reasons GC&E was formed, is to be able to listen and convene and support and help that work that needs to be done with our stakeholders. And we need to be able to share the knowledge, experience, and resources to develop the long-lasting solutions that will improve our nursing pipeline. So we will work by region for some things and across the state for others. I don't think it'll go any further. So I had one, and I think my last slide was a quote saying, we can do more together and do it better than we can individually. And at this point in time, we have to work together, and GC&E is here to support you in doing that work to change the nursing workforce and move forward. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Horton. And I'm going to ask you a question briefly. I want to make sure the members know, let's make sure that our questions relate to nurse staffing and that you spoke to so well. I want to mention this committee passed legislation last session, which dealt with allowing certified medication aides to administer medications in skilled nursing facilities, for example. So tell me, and again, I would ask our questioners be brief and also you be brief so that we can get to everybody today. But what is the Center for Nursing Excellence? What are your positions on some of those efforts to try to delegate more to deal with this issue?
And I think that's very appropriate, because when I was speaking to the nurses working at the top of their license, it is to evaluate those models of care and to figure out what's within the scope of practice of each of those positions and what can be done differently. I think we have to look at things differently than we have in the past and evaluate those and see what are some of those new models of care to allow nurses to work at the top of their license and to bring up the rest of the team to support that work in patient care.
Thank you. Representative LaHood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for your presentation.
You're
Very
welcome.
enlightening and well prepared. You mentioned some virtual technology, and I may have missed the full concept of what you were explaining. Could you go a little
Sure.
bit deeper into that briefly? I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but what was your idea on using virtual technology in regards to nursing?
So I think virtual technology can be used in a variety of ways. I mentioned through the academic side of working with nurses. I've been working with a virtual reality company that is breaking into healthcare. And there's a lot of opportunity to be an adjunct to patient scenarios and simulations and learning skills all the way from the certified nursing assistant through the academic side and all the way into the employer side. And it's much more cost effective and mobile. The simulation labs that are very expensive are great, but not everybody can afford to have one. And you have to have a certain amount of training and things to do that. So this is another added opportunity to help them with experiences.
Right. A couple of years ago for assisted living, House Bill 987, for the first time required a licensed nurse be present to a certain number of hours a week in assisted living communities, depending on the resident count in the building. And because of the nursing shortage, those rules and regulations are being implemented now. And I'm concerned that we're starting off with widespread noncompliance just because of the inability for certain providers to employ enough nurses.
Right. And that's why we have to start now.
Right. And that's where I was hoping, maybe some virtual presence could count towards some of the compliance when it comes to nursing responsibilities and duties that don't require the nurse to be physically present.
Well,
at
and
the
you know, we
bedside.
do some of that with the ICU monitoring and other things these days. So there's opportunities to look at that and how it could be used effectively and appropriately.
Representative Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation.
Yeah.
So my question on the staffing is, at this present time in Georgia, it's not necessary that nurses undergo implicit bias training. However, we do know that there are biases that exist in healthcare and they result in negative outcomes. So I wanted to see, where is the organization on implicit bias training?
So we are a fairly new organization, but I am part of a national commission on removing racism from nursing. And also one of the reasons we really want to diversify the nursing workforce is so we can provide more culturally competent care. And that is part of what we've talked about also in nurses training and beginning from the very beginning so that we can change that. So we do have some work to do, and we do recognize we have some issues within nursing. Thank you.
Representative McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Your presentation was actually, for me, very alarming. 43,000 vacancy is alarming. I wanted to ask you, have you guys looked at some of the root cause of why we have this amount of vacancy, and maybe why people might not want to be going into the nursing field? Because this really is alarming numbers. 43,000 is alarming. And if we do get hit again, and I'm going to bring it back to the pandemic and to something else, we could be in a crisis in this country.
Yes, and there many states are already very challenged, like Georgia is challenged. And your point is well taken. Well, one of our goals is to that. Part of the reasons I brought up the retention side of things is so that we look at the culture and the workplace environment, so that as we recruit people and we bring them in, we can retain them. And it is nursing is a very meaningful work. I've been a nurse for 40 years, and I've loved being a nurse and working this profession, but we want others to come along and we want them to stay in nursing. And we have major challenges with burnout for a variety of reasons. And that's why looking at the models of care, we have to take all of that into consideration, because what we're actually talking about is changing a culture. And that's a lot of hard work to do that.
Thank you. That's all our questions, Ms. Horton. Thank you so much
Thank
for your
you.
presentation. That's a good segue as well to the University System of Georgia, who is up next. We will first have Dr. Tristan Denley from USG. Back over to
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks so much for the committee for having this hearing on such an incredibly important challenge. So what I wanted to do today is just to spend a few moments telling you about work that's really been happening in the university system over a number of years. Just as we've heard several times, this is not a new problem, but it is a serious problem. And so we have been working over a number of years to try to increase really the way in which the university system is able to provide the educated workforce that our healthcare systems need. So just let me see. There we go. Oh, okay. So first of all, just to put this in context, across our university systems, we have 19 of our schools that actually offer nursing programs, but of course, that's not the only programs that we offer in healthcare. And actually, over the last 5 years, so since back in 2017, we have begun more programs in healthcare than in any other field. You can see there's all kinds of fields we've started in cybersecurity and film and data science, and sure enough, education too, and engineering. But health is something that has really been of a primary concern of our board members for a number of years. What we've been doing to try to do things about increasing the number of nurses that we have across our state is, first of all, to work with all of the 19 schools who have nursing programs to really try to increase the effectiveness of those programs. And you can see a steady increase in the number of bachelor's trained graduates that we've been producing steadily over the last 5-6 years. We are now at record levels of producing bachelor's trained graduates each year. Of course, it's the case that we train not only bachelor's trained nurses, but also associates trained nurses, and we need all of those nurses to be able to fill the needs that we have across the state. There was a trend earlier in I guess a few years ago, you can see I guess a feeling that the state and the country needed fewer associates trained nurses and more bachelor's trained nurses. And there were changes then in the way in which programs were developed and unfolded. We back in 2018 really changed the way in which we approach that, recognizing that the state needs nurses, bachelor's, associate, LPNs, all of the nurses that we can. And so you can see here again a change in the effectiveness of those programs back in 2018, where now you can see we are graduating record levels of nurses all across our system. And what I'm happy to tell you is that is the foretaste for the future, because the other work that we've been doing, as well as increasing the effectiveness of the existing programs that we have, is really to create new additional capacity across all of our programs. So this is what is currently underway across our system. In 2020 and 2021, across those two academic years, we've added 753 additional cohort slots to the programs that we have. So just to make it really clear, we graduate, as you saw, right at around 2,800 nurses each year. This is adding to that capacity that we will be adding. You can see 700. Right now there are 753 additional new nurses who are just beginning that 2-year program to complete either their bachelor's or their associate's program to graduate as nurses. And you can see that then over the coming years, there are plans already in place to continue that evolution of increases in cohort size, so that by the time we get to 2025, we will have added another 622 to that 753. These are not pie in the sky plans. These are shovel-ready plans that are already in place. So and each of these numbers year on year will increase the number of graduates that we produce. So by the time this work is done, we will be producing something like 4,000 nurses each year. Lots has been made, and quite rightly so, about the fact that the whole state needs more nurses, not only here in Atlanta, but also in rural Georgia. So I do want to make sure that you see that we have increased those cohort sizes all across the state. This is what is currently in place, that additional 753 slots. This is what the planned increases by 2025, 2026 will produce. So you can see significant increases in cohort size all across our state. And there are plans, I'm sure you can see there in Augusta, you know quite where it is in the geography, and there are plans that are underway to increase the cohort size at Augusta too. Some of that work, as well as increasing the cohort sizes of additional programs, is also just creating completely new programs. And so it is the case that our board has approved the creation of a brand new bachelor's degree in nursing at Fort Valley State University, a new associate's degree in nursing at Georgia Southwestern. Georgia Southwestern has had a long-standing bachelor's program in nursing, but again, in partnership with the local healthcare providers, has added an associate's degree in nursing. And then some members maybe are aware of the brand new kind of degree that we have in the University System of Georgia, the Nexus degree. And we have also begun to work with our institutions to create Nexus degrees in healthcare. Nexus degrees would not create new registered nurses, but would certainly be a very significant tool in our quiver, so to say, to be able to make sure that nurses receive the kinds of training that they need to make sure that hospitals really do have nurses who have all of the training that they need. And so we have already created a Nexus degree in applied gerontology. That's there at the University of North Georgia. And there are planned Nexus degrees in palliative care and critical care and telemedicine. And so this really, I think, will be a very significant tool going forward. Last thing I want to talk about is really nursing pipelines. And I do have both President Frederick here and President Schwag, who will talk more specifically about work at Albany State and also at Kennesaw State. But these pathway projects, I think, really are a wonderful illustration of what can be done when we all work together. So I do want to draw special attention to the Health Science Pathway Project. That's a partnership you can see between Albany State and Albany Tech and Doherty County School System and Phoebe Putney Healthcare, because this is a really wonderful program that takes students all the way from high school all the way through and into nursing programs. And a similar kind of program that is a partnership between Kennesaw State, Wellstar, Georgia Highlands, and Chattahoochee Tech. So as I say, President Frederick and President Schwag will talk in more detail about those two programs. So I'd like to call on President Frederick. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So Dr. Frederick from Albany State University.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me this afternoon. So Albany State University, here we go, I'm gonna change. So we have a great opportunity to have a very large array of programs at Albany State University, particularly in nursing. We have associate's degrees, bachelor's of nursing, RN to BSN degrees. We have a master's. We also have certificate degrees. One of the things that you all, I'm sure will recall, is that the Albany area was hit pretty hard with COVID. And before that, we were already struggling with health outcomes. And when our local hospital is actually paying upwards of $10 million per year for traveling nurses, they call on the university to try and help them get that nursing shortage intact. And so we have been working very closely with our healthcare providers in order to make that happen. Now, Albany State also, with these degrees, we have other health professional degrees, including your respiratory care, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and other degrees that will help in that healthcare setting, particularly in the Albany area. I will also say before I move that we have a large contingency of students that actually come from the Atlanta and Atlanta metro area. And we are trying our best to figure out how to keep those students in the area because of the major shortage in Southwest Georgia for our nurses. And so we started some programs with several partners, and our immediate objectives are to increase our ASN student enrollment. And so we're working on how we recruit those students into that program. We're being very specific about how we bring students into Albany State, and that includes some of those matriculation agreements with schools like Albany Technical College, where we're going to get students from there to come right into Albany State. They will go into various programs, typically in our BSN program, once they've earned their ASN program from the local technical college. And we're going to continue to expand that. Early exposure to healthcare. So being a nurse doesn't start, or wanting to be a nurse doesn't start once you come to college. Typically it's way before that. And so we are really trying to pour into our local middle schools and high schools in order to get them encouraged in health professions, specifically in the nursing fields. And so we have to increase our overall student retention, because before we can talk about the ratio of our nurses to patients or the salaries for our nurses, we have to get them out of college. And so we're working very diligently on making sure that the students that come into our programs remain to graduation with those programs. We've increased our clinical site placements for students, and I'll just talk about that a little bit more when we get to our Phoebe partnership. And we're doing that in order to make sure that our students have the experience they need. So once they graduate, they are immediately ready to be at the bedside with our patients, because that's a big area where we need help. Of course, we have barriers. Some of those barriers include the seats that we have available. And so someone talked about the faculty and availability of faculty. It's a struggle to keep faculty in our colleges because we don't pay as well as our hospitals or in the clinical care. And so those are absolutely very true as far as that salary gap. We also have clinical site availability. Of course, with COVID, a lot of our locations that have clinical sites have kind of pulled back on those because they are shortening who comes into the facility. And so we're working on how to fix that. We are also building a simulation lab for Albany State University. And we're going to do that for not just our school, but schools that are around us. So Albany Tech can be a part of that, as well as some of the other colleges that are in the area. Passing scores on the TEAS test. And so that's the entrance test to get into nursing. And so we know we have a lot of students that fall out before they even get into the nursing program. So we have a whole host of students who want to be nurses, but we got to get them ready through the TEAS exam process in order to get into nursing. And again, that doesn't necessarily happen the first day of college. It should actually happen in high school and in middle school as well. And then scholarship funding. And so as we're going through higher education and getting our students through these programs and the core programs, we have to make sure that they have enough funding to stay in the program overall. And so we're increasing that healthcare pipeline. We've actually, through our partnership with Phoebe Putney Memorial Hospital, which has been a great partner for Albany State University in that Albany area, as well as almost every other university in the area. We've added additional full-time faculty, additional clinical faculty, and our preceptors and mentors, and those are the professionals in the hospital area. We've also increased additional clinical spots. And the difference now is that we have clinical spots throughout the day. So our students in class now are not necessarily your traditional students. We have a whole cohort of that. But as you saw in the first slide, we also have weekend only courses. We have online courses. We have night courses. We're doing whatever we can to meet our students where they are. And so our clinical spots match that. And so that is new for us, and we're making sure that we have those spots in place for those students. We also started a pre-college STEM program. We did our first program this summer with the support again of Phoebe Putney. And those students went through a 6-week rigorous program in health professions. So nursing was the focus, but we also made them aware of other healthcare professions that they could take as well and get that degree right there at Albany State. Our EMS program, or EMT program, those are your paramedics. We are also short, severely short of paramedics in our area. 100% of our EMT graduates get a job immediately. And so that is something we're focusing on as well. The partnership with Phoebe Putney Memorial Hospital, again, we do have a critical shortage specifically in our area. And the partnership helped to forge that $750,000 in new education. So these are new seats that Dr. Denley talked about earlier. We added 30 new seats to our program this fall, and we're looking to continue to add those seats every year going forward. And we are a unique program in that we will accept students every semester, unlike some other cohort programs. We also, again, the pre-college STEM program, that's middle and high school students. It worked really well this summer. We also paid those students to be a part of the program. And then we have current college students as well that we're looking at in the STEM Academy, and we're going to focus on those. And that is it in our wonderful Albany State University emblem. Any questions?
All right, let's, before we take questions from the university system, let's hear briefly from Dr. Schwag as well at Kennesaw State University, and then any questions of the committee for the three up.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to be here in committee. Glad to be here. I get the honor of talking about a relationship that we have with Wellstar Health System. In 2020, obviously a great need in our state to address the shortage of nursing, of nurses. We moved forward with a partnership, a relationship with Wellstar Health System. Wellstar Health Systems, excuse me. Wellstar Health Systems entered into a relationship with us where they provided $9 million in funding. $2.5 million of that funding was for scholarships, and it's an endowment. And so that endowment allows for about $100,000 of scholarship money to be paid each year, about $2,000 for 50 students each year. Which provides obviously much needed financial support for our students. The other part of that of the funding that was given, the $6.2 million grant over 5 years, was to address the needs that we had within the college to be able to support increased enrollment. So the enrollment at that particular time was about 512 students. The goal of this particular relationship is to grow it to 1,024. So the real need is in new faculty, as has already been mentioned. So the need is for new faculty, and it's very, very difficult to hire faculty. And so this is really a partnership in terms of how this money works. So in year one, we are to hire X number of new faculty. Those funds are given to hire those faculty in that year by Wellstar. But the next year, Kennesaw takes over the expense, the recurring expense of those faculty lines. In addition to faculty lines, we are also funding new staff to support the program, as well as new equipment for labs. So it's a total need that's being met by the opportunity to have this relationship. So up to 32 new faculty members, 20 new staff members will be in place by 2025. Again, that's when we plan to have the total number of students at 1,024. So at KSU, we have great demand for our program. Our acceptance rate in the program right now is about 30%. Again, the issue is making sure that we have enough faculty to be able to deliver the program. Our students do very well when they graduate. Our pass rate on the NCLEX exam is above the national average at about 96%. One of the great things about this partnership is that we've worked with Wellstar for many, many years. Our health sciences college is called the Wellstar College of Health and Human Services. This is the Wellstar School of Nursing that we're working in. And so we continue to have conversations with Wellstar, with our partners, about how we can enhance this program and improve this program. We have current conversations with them right now to see if we can grow the enrollment in the program even more than where it is. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Schwig, I'm going to begin with a question for you to clarify something you just said. You mentioned a 30% acceptance rate. To
Correct.
make sure I understand that, is that 30% of qualified applicants or 35% of applicants?
30% of
Big
applicants
difference.
overall.
30% of applicants overall, many of
Overall.
whom would not be qualified, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
so
Now, I
that-
will tell you, when we
It would be
began,
interesting to know how many qualified applicants who meet the criteria to be admitted system-wide in all of your nursing schools. I think it would be helpful for us to know how many of those individuals, because those are people that absolutely would be in class if there was room for them.
it's great.
But thank you for that.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, we're going to take a few questions from, I guess, the three of you. If y'all want to join together. Again, we're going to encourage everybody to be brief. We've got a lot of folks to speak today. Representative Hill is right here on 4. Is it?
Just a quick question. In lieu of the shortage of the nursing, are there any programs out there that accept and acknowledge the training of our military, our corpsmen, our medics? So, I mean, that would be a good supply, it looks like to me.
Yeah, actually, this is something that we're working on right now. We do have some programs, some relatively small programs that are medic to ASN and BSN programs, but we right now are working on expanding that. So as you say, it's a
Do
really
they
great
acknowledge
opportunity.
their training though? Is that?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
That's the idea, that we would acknowledge the training that they had as part of their military service, and then use that as prior learning assessment towards their degrees. Exactly right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Representative McDonald.
Quick question on looking at your map here. In the coastal, right above the coastal region and the central Savannah, why is there such a shortage in the program of no students going through any programs in that area there?
I think we have to show.
I'm sorry, right in that area. It's like a big.
Yeah, so I mentioned that in passing. So Augusta University is right there. Augusta is right now making plans to expand their cohort, but those I think I tried to make the case that the increases in those cohort sizes that I put into the presentation are not plans. They are shovel ready, so to say. The Augusta is still in the process of.
And I
doing
was
those plans.
kind of making my way up to where the Georgia Mountain with two big regional hospitals, Lanier Tech and their big program, university system.
Yeah.
Why is that number as low as it is?
Show
Or the
you.
59?
So that's University of North Georgia, and they similarly are working on other plans to increase.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. Representative Allen.
Yeah, so my question, hopefully it's simple, but do you all know the retention rate of the students that we're putting through? I know someone mentioned it about keeping them in the region, but overall, how many nurses are we educating in Georgia who choose not to practice in Georgia?
Yeah, so we do know that. Actually, the graduation rates from nursing programs is actually very high. As we've talked about, these are very selective programs. So the students who are admitted to those programs are some of the best students that we have in the university system. They complete those programs at very high rates, in the high 80s, low 90s of the proportion of students who begin. Effectively, the students who leave, most commonly they leave because nursing wasn't what they expected it to be. They weren't anticipating the challenges of perhaps the emotional challenges, the physical challenges of what nursing is as a profession and a discipline. And so once they're in there, they really do complete those programs at very high rates. And as President Schweg has pointed out, the NCLEX pass rates are also extremely high, well into the 90s. So effectively, when students are admitted to the programs, it is very likely that will turn into a qualified nurse effectively in 2 years or a little bit more.
But to clarify, my question is more of how many are staying in the state to practice, not graduating, but how many are we educating, but then choose to go practice and build their career
in Georgia?
in a different state?
Yeah, so I'm not going to quote that number off the top of my head, but we do have that number. And again, that number is actually pretty high. It's in the, if I remember correctly, I don't want to say it wrong. So we will get you that number.
And that was my concern. I believe it probably is higher than we all think. And a serious consideration, Mr. Chairman, for the committee should be to look at incentives to make sure that those that we're investing in to educate, we're keeping here.
Yeah, it's clear. I mean, the reality is the majority of the nurses do stay here, but there are nurses who leave, and clearly we would be advantaged by finding mechanisms to encourage them to stay here in Georgia. Absolutely.
Excellent question. And perhaps y'all could provide the committee with some of this data that we've spoken to. That would be most helpful. We have a question here from this committee's one of our favorite nurses, Representative LaHood.
Thank you. And Representative Allen, you asked my main question about the student retention rate, nursing student. Out of those that don't finish the nursing program, is there some way we could capture those into other healthcare, professions, maybe something less strenuous than a RM program?
So I quoted that 30% acceptance rate into the program. And obviously, we were very concerned about what happened to those other students that didn't get in. So we started about 2 years ago an integrated health sciences degree that will use those credits that students invested to apply to nursing program, to be able to continue their studies, to continue towards graduation. And once they graduate, they may decide at that point that they're going to go into an accelerated nursing program with a bachelor's degree, and they would have that opportunity at KSU to apply again. So I know that's talking about students that apply. We do everything we can to make sure that students can graduate once they're not accepted into that program.
All right. And our first
And
question
if I
from our
may-
new member. Oh, I'm sorry.
If I'm sorry, if I have to say Albany State as well.
Okay.
But we also have programs. We actually watch those students and we actually put them in pathways where they can go in different degree programs. Some of them are certificate programs, but most of them are additional ASN, or I'm sorry, associate degree programs that we have those students go into.
Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm concerned about people leaving our area. Are there any incentive programs for them that are in school that they may, if they're taking out tremendous loans in order to remain in school, that can be as an incentive for them to remain in our rural areas?
So I'll say for our students, the hospitals do offer some incentives, but the university does not offer incentives for them to remain in the area. You know, someone mentioned earlier about impacting tuition if they agree to stay. Those are definitely things that we should be looking at, but the funding for those things have not been identified.
Thank you.
Okay, that completes our questions. And thank you all for being here, and for Miss Ashley Jones as well. Ashley, if y'all could get us that information, and it would be good to know how many, you know, to some of the comments, how many faculty positions are unfilled in our nursing schools currently, maybe by institution. That would be helpful for us to have, and we'll disseminate that to all of our members. Okay, now we have several individuals to speak who are members of the Georgia Alliance of Community Hospitals. Want to have their, let's see, we got, oh yeah, Mr. Tim Kibler will be up first. Their government affairs leader. And then we will have Miss Deb Bailey and Miss Denise Ray as well on deck. Mr. Kibler, thank you, sir, for
Tim
being
Kibler with the
here.
Georgia Alliance Community Hospitals. Would it be possible for me to defer and let Miss Bailey and Miss Ray go first and then come up?
Yes, sir. Anything y'all prefer. We're here to hear
Deb
from
Bailey
you.
is the Vice President of Government Affairs at Northeast Georgia, but is a longtime practicing nurse as well. And she
Excellent.
is probably one of the unique people in our state to address these issues.
Thank you,
Thank you.
sir. Thank you for being here. Okay, Miss Bailey, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
Floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I am Deb Bailey. I represent the Northeast Georgia Health System, and it's a four-hospital, not-for-profit system serving most all of Northeast Georgia. But I would like to start my testimony today by saying thank you to the Georgia General Assembly and to the governor, because during the last 18 months of COVID, you have provided us with the staffing that we were able to care for all of our patients. Not in the way that we would like to have cared for them, but it was over the last 18 months, almost $80 million worth of care that the state has provided for us. We could not have done that without you, and we would be delinquent to not tell you thank you.
Miss Bailey, not to interrupt you, but I have to tell you, I appreciate that, because yes, the governor, and I want to thank the departments that have been involved, particularly the Department of Community Health, for their efforts in that,
Yes.
in that as well. So we thank you for recognizing that.
Yes, and they listened to us each time when we were worried that it was going to go away. So I've been a nurse since 1974. I've been a staff nurse, a charge nurse, a vice president for nursing. But actually before that, I was a nursing assistant in a nursing home at 14, giving medications to about 50 patients at when I was 17. So I've experienced a lot of nurse shortages over that almost 50 years. but never in our entire career have we seen anything like we are up against today. At Northeast Georgia Health System, we have approximately 10,000 employees, and we have 3,800 nurses. And today we have a vacancy rate of about 30%. We are 472 nurses short. Last week, we had 500 traveling nurses caring for our acutely ill patients throughout our system. And that was at the cost, in addition to what the state provided us, $8 million last month in traveling nurses, which of course is not sustainable. We're actually, because of the area that we serve and we are overrun with patients, we are looking at building a new tower. We had all of the financial people come in to look at, can we afford to build the new tower? They said, yes, you can afford to build a new tower, but how are you going to staff it? That was their one key point of, if you add on to your hospital, you can afford it, but you can't staff it. We at Northeast Georgia Health System have been known for our nursing care for decades. We're very sensitive to the fact that our nurses are now caring for more patients than they should, and that it's difficult for them both physically, psychologically, emotionally. They have been taking care of patients in the last month in tents, mobile units, offices, hallways. And in doing so, we look at that from the standpoint of how do you determine the nurses that you need. We have not had the nurses that we need, but we have very sophisticated systems of evaluating the patients that we have, looking at what their needs are and determining what, in a very predictive model of what our needs are for the next shift and for the next day. And so because of that, we feel like we know what our ratio should be in critical care, in ICU, and anesthesia units. And we feel like that it would be very detrimental to us to have someone outside our organization tell us what those numbers should be, because we need the opportunity to move those people around when the time comes that, like we have had to do over the last number of months. However, although we've never seen a crisis like this, we know that we can come up with the answers as we work together, but we need both some short-term and some long-term solutions. I'd like to answer one of the questions from earlier before. One of the questions was, how do we incentivize our nurses to stay? I think we incentivize our nurses to stay with loan forgiveness programs is very much one of those. If a nurse knows that she can essentially go to nursing school almost for free and work it off by either working in the state of Georgia or working for one of our hospitals, because most of us have loan forgiveness programs, that would certainly be helpful to us. One of the earlier questions that you asked was, you know, why are nurses leaving the bedside so fast? One of the answers that you heard was because nurses didn't really understand what they were getting into. Nursing school, you know, maybe we look at things while that student that didn't get in a nursing program and is doing some of the other additional sciences, that we can partner with that university system or the technical system, bring them in while they're doing those sciences and let them learn if they want to be a nurse or not be a nurse. That might significantly impact. One of the questions that you had earlier was, how many nurse vacancies do we have in faculty? One of the things that would be very helpful to us is the Georgia Board of Nursing has a very specific ratio of full-time faculty to part-time faculty. Hospitals are standing here ready to partner with you for part-time faculty. We're not able to do it in many of the nursing programs because of the rules and regs of the Board of Nursing that dictates what that ratio has to be. So we're here saying we have masters prepared, doctor prepared nurses that work in our hospital that we'll partner with. And we do now, but we could do it more so that we could take more students if one of those rules was changed. So that's a very simple short-term solution. Of course, I think one of the other things that we have to do is we've got to go on a statewide recruiting campaign. We've got to look at how we can fill those slots and increase more. And obviously we talked about the salary of faculty. The salary of our staff nurses has gone up significantly. It has not in both the Regents and the technical program. And we certainly support them being able to stay in their positions so they can take our students. And we're happy to work with the state, with the university systems, with the technical schools. And we feel like that with this effort, we can figure out how to solve this problem, both short-term and long-term, because this is a problem that honestly is life and death for our families. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions from the committee? Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Bailey. We'll now hear from Ms. Denise Ray with Piedmont Health System.
Good afternoon, and I too want to tell the chairman and the committee, thank you very much for allowing us to be here to speak to you today about the nursing shortage. And I really want to say thank you for all the support that you provided to us in terms of just nurses. And when you think back on that and you look at the amount of money that it cost, it was absolutely astronomical, the cost of taking care of patients for the last couple of years. And each of our hospitals have had to bear that cost on top of that as well. Again, I'm Denise Ray, and I am the Chief Nursing Executive for Piedmont Healthcare, and I represent over 9,000 nurses in 16 hospitals in my role at Piedmont. In addition to that, I'm also the CEO for Piedmont Mountainside, which is a rural hospital up in Jasper, Georgia. And so I have the knowledge and experience of working with both urban, suburban, and rural facilities. And these past 2 years have been one of the worst crises I've ever seen. I've been a CNE for 20 years, and I too hate giving away age, but I've been a nurse for more than 40 years, and I've never seen anything quite like what we're experiencing today. It's really scary. I mean, it really is. You know, as I've listened to everybody that's been up here before me, whether it's the educational institutions, whether it is our hospitals that have experienced this firsthand each and every day for the last couple of years, everything that they're saying is true. All of the recommendations are true. But I ask you to think for just a moment, those are things that we've been working on for the last decade. They're not new. And we didn't solve them in that last decade before we even experienced a pandemic. Today, I have got Justin Leal with me, and he is the Executive Director of Clinical Operations for Piedmont Healthcare System. And he has that front line knowledge of what it's been like over the past year, ensuring that we've had the staff that we've needed in order to take care of patients throughout our entire system. And he's going to give you some numbers that will absolutely astound you in terms of what we've had to deal with. So he's going to talk about the nursing workforce shortage and the factors that have contributed to that. He's going to talk about the challenges with recruitment. He's also going to talk about turnover and the why behind it, a little bit on education, but the one thing too that I want us all to be very aware of, and that's the new trend that has emerged with contract nursing. Contract nursing has been something that we cannot survive into the future and be able to keep our hospitals thriving and able to take care of us. We will not be able to stabilize this nursing workforce if we don't figure out how we manage that along with everything that's been said here today. Justin's going to begin by giving you just a very brief story in the day and the life of a nurse. I'm going to turn it over to Justin Leal.
And that's Justin Lee.
Justin Leal.
Leo.
L-E-A-L.
Thank you, Mr. Leo, for being here. I'm going to encourage you again. We got, in order that we finish,
Yep.
brevity.
Be
Thank
quick.
you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. Like Denise mentioned, my name is Justin Leal. I'm the Executive Director of Clinical Operations for Piedmont Healthcare. And part of that responsibility over the last year and a half has included serving as the section chief for staffing in the Incident Command Center for Piedmont Healthcare. To help describe the direct patient care nursing needs that our hospitals are experiencing, I'd like to take you through the beginning of a night shift in the shoes of an emergency room nurse. It's 6:40 p.m. and Jennifer has just arrived in the emergency department staff break room at the beginning of her shift. Jennifer's been a nurse for 4 years, and at 28 years old, she's quite a bit younger than most of her colleagues. Over half of all registered nurses in the United States are over the age of 50. Just before 7 p.m., Jennifer joins her coworkers at the nurses station where the charge nurse goes over the room assignments for the night. As a general rule of thumb, each nurse in the emergency room is supposed to be assigned 3 patients to care for at any given time, although 4 seems to be the norm lately. Over the last several weeks, though, 4 nurses in the department have left to take travel contracts out of state, and as a result, Jennifer is assigned 5 rooms to cover for tonight. Room 1 is currently vacant. Room 2 has a patient that was treated in the emergency room earlier in the day and was admitted as an inpatient to the hospital, but since the medical surgical unit upstairs is also short-staffed, they haven't been able to move the patient upstairs yet. Room 3 is occupied by a behavioral health patient who's experiencing a mental health crisis and is waiting to be accepted for transfer to a behavioral health facility. Now, this patient is highly agitated and requires a staff member to directly observe him at all times to make sure he doesn't try to harm himself or harm others. The emergency room nursing assistant, or the patient care tech, has been pulled away from his usual duties and assigned to sit with this patient until another staff member can be found to take over. In room 4, there's a patient who was experiencing chest pain earlier, but is currently stable and is waiting on the results of his lab to come back. And the patient in room 5 has just arrived and is still waiting to be seen by the nurse and the physician. Jennifer quickly meets in the hallway with the day shift nurse to discuss the patient she'll be taking care over for, and then starts to mentally prioritize and plan out the things that she needs to do. Since the patient in room 5 is a new arrival and hasn't been fully assessed yet, Jennifer goes to see her first. The patient is an elderly woman who's been feeling dizzy and uncomfortable since yesterday. Part of the initial exam is to help the patient change into a hospital gown and get her settled on an ER stretcher. The patient isn't very stable on her feet, though, and Jennifer needs help to get the patient changed in position properly. So she runs over to the other side of the nurse's station to ask another nurse for help. This nurse, who is also caring for 6 patients of her own at the time. Jennifer and the other nurse come back to help get the patient settled. They put her on the stretcher, help get her into a hospital gown, put her on a cardiac monitor, take her blood pressure, perform an EKG, start an IV in the patient's arm, and draw blood for an initial set of labs. As Jennifer and the other nurse walk out of the room, Jennifer hears the patient care tech who's assigned to the mental health care patient calling for her. Jennifer can now also hear the patient yelling and threatening to harm the staff. She sees that a security officer has been called to the patient's room to help de-escalate the situation. Jennifer runs to find the emergency room physician to ask him to order medication to help calm the patient down. After searching for 5 minutes, she finds the doctor, gets the order, goes to the medication room, draws up the drug, and then returns to the room to administer the medication. As she leaves that patient's room out of the corner of her eye, she notices that her once vacant room has now what appears to be a young mother with her teenage son sitting on the stretcher. As she quickly walks by the door, Jennifer looks inside the room to visually assess the situation and mentally triage the patient's condition. Both the mother and the son don't appear to be in any acute distress, so Jennifer proceeds back to see the elderly women in room 5. Looking at the patient's medical record now, Jennifer sees that the ED physician has ordered additional labs, urinalysis, an abdominal CT, a chest X-ray, some medication. Jennifer will have to tend to all of these orders here as soon as possible. At this point, we're only 2 hours into her shift, and Jennifer knows it's going to be a long night. Over the course of her 12-hour shift, she will walk, or rather run, for about 5 miles. She's feeling overwhelmed, and she worries about giving good care to her 5 patients, 2 of whom she hasn't even had a chance to see yet. She still has a love for nursing and a passion for helping others, but lately she's noticed that it's a little bit harder to get motivated at the start of her shift, and that's starting to frighten her. Just then, Jennifer hears a voice that's familiar to her overhead say, "Code blue, ER room 11." And like all of her colleagues, she has to run to respond. Jennifer's experience isn't unique. Burnout is a major contributor to staff turnover in healthcare, and new nurses in particular are leaving the profession at an alarming rate. A recent study found that up to 33%, that's 1 in 3, of new nurses leave the profession altogether within the first 2 years. Additionally, more and more nurses are retiring. A study conducted before the pandemic concluded that over 1 million nurses will retire between the years of 2020 and 2030, and the pandemic has just poured fuel onto that fire. As turnover continues to grow, so does the cost of managing it, especially during this pandemic. In aggregate, the average hospital is estimated to lose about $300,000 per year for each percentage point in annual nurse turnover. The average nursing turnover across the United States is about 16.4%, which means that hospitals will pay nearly $5 million each year in costs associated with nursing turnover. Trends related to contract labor further complicate this issue. During the pandemic, a large number of clinical employees left their hospital-based jobs to take contract travel assignments, often leaving to practice in other states. This trend continues today. This leads to exceptional growth in contract labor costs. Prior to the pandemic, the average hourly rate a hospital paid to a nursing staffing company for a registered nurse was around $65 an hour. The current average rate is $180 for that same nurse, with rates going as high as $275 an hour during the last peak of COVID. A qualified nurse can take a contract travel assignment in other states that are undergoing particular crisis, making as much as $4,000 a week right now. And most community hospitals simply can't keep up with that price. Staffing is challenging for all hospitals, but even for larger integrated health systems. In the past, hospitals that were part of the same health system would share resources across the facilities to meet the needs of the patients. Part of my responsibility leading a central staffing office is to identify hospitals and departments with greatest need and shifting and reassigning resources to help make sure that each of our hospitals is at least adequately staffed. But throughout the pandemic and even now, we often find ourselves in situations where all of the hospitals within our system across one specialty or another has significant staffing needs, and there are no additional or unassigned resources left to send. Now, different data sources project different future deficit or surplus levels for nursing in the state of Georgia. I've seen some that even project a surplus of nurses in the coming years. But these projections I've found do not adequately consider the needs, particularly in rural communities. Rural communities absorb far greater impacts of the nursing shortage than metropolitan areas. If you consider that only 16% of all registered nurses live in rural areas, and those are left to serve 52 million Americans. So we appreciate your focus on this critical issue, and we want to thank you for your time. And Denise and I would be happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Leal. And Mr. Kibler, do you have some comments you want to add now?
Yes, sir. I'll be very brief.
Thank you, sir.
I'll try to be as quick as possible.
Yes.
Sort of getting back to potential legislative or steps that this committee could take. Again, I am Tim Kibler with Georgia Alliance Community Hospitals, not-for-profit hospitals, 85 not-for-profit hospitals in Georgia can make up our association. What we would urge you to do is reject any idea about a mandated nurse-patient ratio. We're glad that's not really been brought forward today. It has been discussed in the past, as you've heard from a vast array of folks that would create significant problems. We'd also oppose mandated staffing committee issues. We, as you've heard from both Northeast Georgia and Piedmont, there is a significant effort put into adequately staffing our wards, our departments on an ongoing basis. And the inability to react quickly, nimbly in a changing environment could significantly impair access to care. And we're very concerned about that. As Justin just said, when you want to have one nurse for 3 patients, but the practical reality is one nurse per 6 patients, that, you have to be able to make those changes. Or otherwise, those other 3 patients simply don't receive care. And that's not acceptable. And we would hope is not going to be a public policy goal of our state. What I think this committee, and we would urge this committee to do, would be to address additional nursing education opportunities, specifically enhance the salary of the faculty so that they can make a commitment to be there to provide the direction and instruction that potential nurses, future nurses need. We need to enhance the number of slots that are available. Dr. Denley mentioned another 800 slots coming available as part of their cohorts. But again, we're at 43,000 nurses short. That's 40 years to address the problem we have now. And so we've got to do more on that front. We also, as I think Ms. Horton mentioned, the need for additional clinical sites so that nurses' clinical training can be improved, so that there will be less shock when they arrive at the bedside in their new nursing positions. And I want to sum up by again reiterating what Ms. Bailey said, that thank you to the General Assembly and the administration. Had it not been for the efforts of DCH to supplement the staffs of our institutions, thousands more Georgians would have passed away from COVID this past year. So it is that is the kind of partnership that we hope we will see going forward, as well as we address the continuing health challenges of our state, and they are many. I'll be glad to take any questions, Mr. Chairman, if the committee has any.
Thank you, Mr. Kibler. That you are a master of brevity. That was excellent. And I appreciate you for that. And you gave us a lot of good information. Oh, you gave us a
Not master walking.
well, we didn't say that. That's right. But we do appreciate your good comments. I am going to ask on behalf of the committee that you do one thing for us. If you will educate us more fully, not today, but provide us with some information on the challenges we just heard around contract nurses.
Yes, sir.
And how that is impacting your 85 members all across the state. I would love for all of us to understand that better. I think all of us are nodding our heads. That would be most helpful. We're going to go, and again, I apologize, folks. One of my duties here is to try to keep us on track, and we always wish we had more time. I'm going to go out of sequence here for one moment because we have Ms. Claire Russell here, who is going back to Augusta. And so I want to allow her to go next, and then we will go to the Georgia Hospital Association with Ms. Anna Adams. But right now we have Holly Gibbs and Claire Russell. I think Claire is the president, is presenting of the Georgia Association of Community Care Providers. And again, Claire, I know you got a long ride ahead of you. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chairman Petrie and fellow members of this committee. I'm so happy to be here to share with y'all the challenges that we've had. So I am Claire Russell, the president of the Georgia Association of Community Care Providers. So we cover providers throughout the state of Georgia that are home and community-based services. We are where the rubber meets the road. You can't get any more. You can be frontline in a hospital, but this is really frontline. And let me tell you about what frontline means to home and community-based providers. It means you have no idea what you're walking into when you walk into a home, or when a client comes to you in your personal care home or family member or into your adult day center. You don't know where they've been, who they've been with, who they've contacted. You can COVID test them and they can be negative then, and then they can be negative, they can be positive within 24 hours. So these I submit to you representatives are true heroes, these nurses and caregivers and community home and community-based services. And so I speak to you today on behalf of all of those in the state of Georgia. But personally, I thought I was going to be saying something when I said I've been an RN for 38 years, but hat is off to those who have worked longer than I have. I'm also a business owner, and I work with these challenges every single day. What I think that you'll hear me say is, let you know is, I have 2 nurses this year that are going to age out in December, and I have nobody to replace them with. I'm looking at the fact that I won't be able to age out. There's going to need to be a lot of Botox in my life because there's nobody to replace me. I'm having to do some nursing work here and there just to keep things going. I have a fairly large business, and we do need to do something about this. I agree wholeheartedly with the people that came and spoke to you guys. The contract nursing, you can't. It is egregious to try to hire a nurse these days and pay them what they're getting paid. You can't do it. You just cannot do it. The rural areas, that's a very rough, a very hard area to staff. I'm sending a nurse in the morning. She will be driving 2 hours to work 8 hours and then 2 hours home. Oftentimes I'll let her spend the night in a hotel when she agrees to be away from her family. But periodically she needs to do that because in the rural areas, you can hardly hire anybody. And these contract nurses to come to a rural area, it would not benefit me to hire a contract nurse if I could afford to pay one, because I would need to train them in order to meet the regulations that we follow in home and community-based services. So we've had these struggles for years, and we've done everything that we could do. We've had a lot of help from the government as far as what an LPN could do, what a CNA can do. But this pandemic has escalated things, and we are really in a dire need for assistance. I do want to say one thing about that. As I listen to folks talk, I want to caution the idea or opportunity of enhancing non-professionals to the skills of a professional, because then we just open ourselves up to liability. So I think we have to be really careful what we open up for and what we allow. I took a few notes while people were speaking, and one, I have to say, I lived through an associate's degree nurse wasn't good enough, and the hospitals weren't going to no longer employ them unless they got their BSN. And so that we lost a lot of associate nurses. And I think that that's a shame, because I think they really helped fill the bill. Their schooling is not quite as intense, and they were able to get through it. They could do it in a shorter amount of time, and it was a really great thing for them to do. Now, if you take a look at your, and I'm going totally off script here, but if you take a look at the people that are here speaking, I think you realize that nurses, the university system is awesome. I'm a product of it. I was a graduate of MCG. They have realized the intelligence of many nurses, and they have encouraged it, and they have come up with enhanced degrees and enhanced programs. And guys, I just want you to know, when I hire an RN, one of the first things they're talking about is going to school to their enhanced, I want to be a nurse practitioner. I want to be this one. They are intelligent people. Look at the credentials behind the people that you spoke to today. But you know what? If we had more, and this is just an idea, if we had more associate nurses, those are people who want to go to work. They want to help support their families. They may not necessarily want to go to the top of the rung. They want to do a good job. They don't want to be burned out, overused. And so that's something I think that we should really consider as I listen to everybody speak. Hold on just one moment. I do want to tell you that these HCBS providers, these are my heroes. I have firsthand witnessed them save lives. In these rural areas, I have seen them get people to hospitals. I had a gentleman 2 weeks ago in one of our adult day centers who had a stroke in front of one of our aides. she immediately got help. They gave care on scene, got 911 in, and he is back to his baseline. Had he been home instead of an adult day center, wife would have been doing whatever she needed to do within that household, and this man probably would not be in the world today. So these are heroes. And, you know, we hear on the news about all the other professions and they're, you know, and we're so glad for a minute that the healthcare people are our heroes and taking care of us. But, you know, we're really struggling. Last year, you guys voted a 10% raise for home and community-based services. It had been since 2014 since we'd had anything. Can you imagine living off the wage you made in 2014, especially in today's world with groceries being what they are, because those home and community-based services that do personal care homes or adult daycare, there are bricks and mortar, there's food, there's all of those things. You cannot pay employees today what you could in 2014. And I'm almost embarrassed knowing what the rates are now that we're paying people to tell you what they were back then, because it was much lower, but we're doing it with the same reimbursement level we had then. That raise increase that you voted in last year is being held up federally. Guys, we're in a dire strait over it. I had a provider call me yesterday talking about going out of business for it. I have yet to talk to a provider who has not borrowed money and taken advantage of anything that's out there with the EDIL loans or any of those other things. And so I just submit to you that probably 99% of the RN, LPN work that home and community-based providers have to provide to pay that nurse is not reimbursable. It's coming out of that 2014 reimbursement rate. So I'm paying nurses to do things that I can't bill for them to do. So I'm not over Piedmont, and I can't tell you about all of the Piedmont things, but what I can tell you about is where the rubber meets the road. We need some help, and we need some help out there, and how we get it makes a real difference, truly. My best, seriously listening to it, I think that associate nursing and trying to push those degrees would be an awesome thing to do. But RNs, LPNs, those people that are out in the field, not knowing what they're going to walk into, what they're going to get on their plate, what kind of emergency they're going to have to deal with without a call button. Those are my heroes. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Russell. And we're going to have Ms. Anna Adams up next with the Georgia Hospital Association, and then we're going to have Dave Lamb. I'm going to ask our members if they can stick with us. We're going to go over a little, but not by much. I do want to mention, Ms. Russell, to your comment, to make sure that our members understand. I think what you were speaking to when you spoke to you're not reimbursed for your nursing, community-based services, you're not billing for nursing, you're billing for providing a service in the community, and the nursing is the oversight and supervision is just part of the service. So it just kind of is overlaying over the entirety of the service. So you aren't billing for nursing, and that is indeed a challenge. Of a caregiver, correct. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you for your comments. And Ms. Adams with the Georgia Hospital Association, thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, members of the committee. This has been a really enlightening committee to pay attention to today, and I've taken a lot of notes on things that I'm hopeful I can answer for you today, and if not, I will certainly go back to our membership to get those answers. But I want you to know first and foremost that this year, GHA's #1 legislative priority is workforce development. This is an issue that has been going on for more than a decade, but COVID has certainly exacerbated the challenges that we're seeing at the hospital level and at the physician practice level, frankly, as well. But from a hospital perspective, with everything that we've seen with COVID over the last 2 years, this has been an unsustainable challenge. And so I want to echo Deb Bailey's comments earlier about our thanks for the state. And I know that we at GHA have gotten calls from CEOs late at night, nearly in tears, because they're going to have to shut down beds. They're going to have to shut down entire wings of hospitals because they don't have the staff to safely treat the patients that they have. So when you were looking at the COVID numbers every day and worrying about our bed capacity, the challenge was never that we didn't have enough beds. We were putting beds in conference rooms. We were putting beds in offices, putting beds in the hallway. The problem is we didn't have the people to treat them. And at the end of the day, that's what a hospital is. It's a group of people who are there to treat the patients. And without those individuals, we can't operate. And so we are very grateful to our nurses, grateful to the state for your response, and grateful that you're continuing to do that. You had mentioned earlier that you'd like to know more about the nurse staffing agencies and what that's like from a hospital standpoint. So I would first like to say that from a Georgia standpoint, right now, we have 12,566 open clinical positions that are being actively recruited for that you can go on a job board and search for. If a new business were to come to Georgia and say, we're bringing 12,500 jobs to the state, it would be front page news. Everybody would be so excited about that. We have that right now. What we don't have are the trained people who are willing to step into those roles. And we don't have the ability to train them under our current system. So we have put together at GHA a working group of hospital CEOs, and these represent hospitals in rural areas, urban areas, small, large, for-profit, nonprofit, to get their perspective on what it is that they need. And some of the responses that we've gotten have been interesting. And to the point that was made earlier, our CEOs are asking for associate degree nurses because what we need are bedside nurses. We don't need people who are willing to climb the ladder. We're thankful for them again, but we need people who want to show up every day and just take care of patients. This working group has offered some suggestions, solutions to this issue. And I want to kind of go through those briefly, knowing that some of these may need more work, but the Board of Nursing issue that was brought up earlier is something that I think is low-hanging fruit. We've got to figure out how to make sure that we have enough faculty to train these individuals, either in the tech school setting, in a university setting. But the issue now is that too many of them have to be full-time. And if you want people who have the clinical experience and the background to do it, you want people who come from a hospital setting, who have that clinical experience. So first and foremost, the Board of Nursing issue. Second, some of the solutions that were offered, potential tax credits for nurses, tuition reimbursement. And then one of the interesting things that has come out of this working group is something that we're looking into now, which is a hospital-based nursing program. And it's something that we used to do years ago, where these nurses started out at a technical college or started out in a university system and then moved over into the hospital setting through a partnership, and they did their educational training there. So we know they have the clinical experience. They grew up in the hospital. And one of our CEOs at our last meeting pointed out that what he's paying monthly in staffing agency nurses could more than pay for a very robust nursing program in their facility and create their own internal pipeline. So that's kind of a solution where if they have the opportunity to do it, they're helping themselves. And then you, Chairman Petrie, had asked some questions about the staffing agencies and what that looks like from a hospital setting. Deb mentioned $8 million a month. I just mentioned to you $10 million a month from another hospital, and this is in addition to everything that the state is providing. But some of the hospitals are currently at 40% or more staffing agency nurses. So to equate that to something that maybe everybody can understand, if you think of a school setting where you've got children who are preparing for the biggest test of their lives, and half of the staff are substitute teachers, what does that look like for those kids? It means that the teachers who were already employed have to help the new ones who have come in and have to make sure that they understand the process and the policies, and it doubles the workload for the existing staff. While you're just kind of trying to fill that role. So it's definitely concerning. It's more expensive. These nurses come on and they're not long-term. And often we don't know how long they're going to stay. They sign these short-term contracts for 10 weeks, 12 weeks. And with COVID, what we all learned is that a peak can strike at any time, and we never know when it's coming. So to try to get those staff in once you've already hit the peak is nearly impossible. So these are just some of the challenges that we are facing right now, and I will leave you with one additional statistic. Pat Horton had mentioned earlier that 44,000 number. Back in October 2019, the average staffing request was 8,900 for the month. In 2020, 16,049. In 2021, 44,000. So we've gone from 8,000 to 44,000 in 2 years' time for requesting for agency staff. So the need is there. We want to do everything we can to help from a GHA standpoint, and we'll continue to work with the university systems, the technical schools to get there. But we just really appreciate everything you've done for us and are happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the committee? All right, Ms. Adams, it appears there are none. That was excellent, good information. I'm going to ask, while we're waiting on Mr. Dave Lamb to come up, that'll be our last presentation of the day. Mr. Dave Lamb from the, they're not here. Yeah, Home Care Association of America. I want to ask Ms. Adams and others, Tim, all of you that are here, I think it would be helpful, I think what we would like, I hope I'm looking at the members here with me, recommendations. Listen, we all want to solve the problem, right? And we're going to have, some are going to disagree on how we get there. But each association that is represented here, each organization, give us ideas, formally present them to us. We've got copious notes here. We got Ms. Tara's over here just tearing it up. So we got great notes, and that's excellent. But formally, let us know what you think we should do or consider. If we can do it through the means of our budget or through the means of statutory solutions, who knows? Let us know what you think we can do to help solve this problem. You've done so today, but do it formally in writing and just present that to me. Mr. Lamb, thank you for being here, sir.
I need some.
You're going last.
I need some technical assistance.
Oh, you need technical. That does not surprise me knowing you, but that's coming from a guy that can't work his phone.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I will be as brief as I can. There is a lot of information here, and bear with me while I speed through it. We won't go over the points other than to say, I agree. I mean, there is a nursing shortage in the home care industry. We have a serious shortage. I represent the Home Care Association of America. It's national. We have a Georgia chapter, and we, like Gossip that was here earlier, of which I'm a board member, we care for folks all across the state of Georgia in the home and in the community. So surveying our members that 80% of providers cannot find enough applicants. We know from last week's long-term care facility report that nurses and caregivers are in short demand. Baby boomers are growing. In the last 10 years, the last decade, 46%, and we're continuing. I'm a baby boomer. And we know that there are plenty of providers in the state of Georgia to help with long-term care. There's facilities that have over 83,000 bed capacity. But in the community, there's hospice, there's home health, and there's private home care providers, of which we represent. And if you look at the hospice care is both facility and in-home on short duration. Home health is typically after a medical event, and it is of short duration as well. Home care is the long-term, we go in and stay. It might be 2 to 4 hours a day, 2 or 3 days a week, or 7 days a week, or it might be 24/7, but we go into homes to care for folks where they are. It might be with caregivers, it might be with nursing staff, and all of that staff is short to us. If you look at the Kaiser Family Foundation, they, in surveying adult population, saw that 5% of adult population is paying for caregivers and nurses to help for care in their home and community. So if you translate that to Georgia, and what I've given you is a breakdown by region, but that's over 400,000 Georgians receiving care in their home and community. So we all have workforce. I hear these, we're talking and worrying about $15 an hour, $18 an hour. But we also know about nurses. We cannot hire nurses, and we cannot afford. Claire Russell spoke to you before that we do not have nursing reimbursement rates for the vast majority of our care that we provide with Medicaid waiver services. Other programs we do, but it's hard to keep up with the wage pressures, whether it's caregivers or LPNs or RNs. So if you look at, we've got over a 22, 23-year gap. We've got a span between what the gap was, what the reimbursement rate was in 1999 to now of $7.93 an hour. The legislature, you representatives passed on a 10% rate increase to us. That reduced that gap 34 cents an hour. It was $8.27 an hour. So our ability to attract and to retain caregivers is extremely difficult. Now, we also know that facilities typically are able to pay higher pay rates than we are. Looking at BLS data, it's almost $4 an hour difference than what we can pay in the home and community versus a facility, and it's driven by reimbursement rates. If you look at a survey of our membership and a survey that was done last month, our average agency in Georgia needs 25 caregivers. At CareMaster, where I'm from, we're a statewide provider. We could put 40 to 50 caregivers to work in the next 2 to 3 weeks. There's that much need out there. We talk about retailers and restaurants, hospitality. They can put a sign in the window. We can't. Y'all can't. When we put a sign in the window, stuff doesn't get done, and it relates to the care of Georgia's elderly and disabled population. And that population totals 2.4 million Georgians. So a big list there, but remember, workforce shortages mean things aren't being done, whether it's a facility or whether it's in the home. But especially in the home, there's nobody to go. You heard Claire Russell talk about her example. We have all across the state, there are literally thousands of folks that are not getting the care that they need. Well, the CNA registry is something that is an indicator for our workforce. And it declined in an 18-month period over 12%, actually almost 13 at 12.7%. To keep up with 2030, we need to grow it by over 46%. Now, in looking at the numbers, there are some additional numbers that were not included in the number I'm reporting here. But guess what? They're traveling CNAs. They are like the contract nurses that y'all are talking about impacting in hospitals and facilities. They're impacting at a different level too, a traveling workforce in caregivers. The BLS data says it's going to continue to grow. And we know that, y'all see that, but we see it in home care for caregivers and nurses. We have another issue, and that is that's vaccination mandates. We are trying to address that. The Georgia chapter of the Home Care Association of America has done a couple of things to encourage. First of all, it's a nationwide program. that providers such as CareMaster are participating in the Flex for Checks. Folks get paid for getting vaccinated. They also get paid for encouraging others to get vaccinated. We have also applied for funds from the American Rescue Act to help all Georgia's 2012 private home care providers to allow them to both reward and award folks for having been vaccinated or once they are vaccinated. Now, understand that that the request for funds are 3 or 4 times what the pot of money is. So our fingers are still crossed because we think it would be a way to thank and to help improve our workforce. All right, growing caregiver and nurse workforce. Obviously, reimbursement rates are important to us, very important. That 10% rate increase that was due July 1st still has not arrived. And as Claire pointed out previously, our last significant rate increase was October the 1st of 2014. We did get 8 cents. Now that's not 8%. That's 8 pennies 3 or 4 years ago to make a basic adjustment. We need to grow interest in CNA programs, high schools, college and career academies. And I noticed some of the charts don't forget college and career academies. I'm prejudiced about that. We have the Griffin Region College and Career Academy in Griffin, and it represents 3 counties. It has a very strong CNA and some other healthcare programs. It works with high schools in 3 counties, but it also works with Southern Crescent Technical College on training those. We need to emphasize caregiving and CNA training programs at the technical college system. They can't only be stepping stones. We have places within the system where we used to go recruit CNAs that they don't have recruitment for CNAs anymore because they encourage them all to move on to nursing degrees. We need to strengthen CNAs. So, regional approach. We have workforce development boards. We also need to look about upgrading our training curriculum for CNAs to include electronic devices, electronic visit verification, real-time care. I'm a manufacturer by background years and years ago, and it's nice to be able to see things in real time, and we can. Remote patient monitoring, all the reporting and clock in that we do electronically now. And then create a Medicaid waiver to make our caregivers eligible for Medicaid benefits. A lot of them, their children are, but make that availability only if they're working and engaged in home care, at least 30 hours a week using the Affordable Care Act threshold. So a little cartoon, but it's actually serious. We need to make sure that that safety net is there for the aging population, 1.5 million Georgians. And then each of you, I've given you a personalized regional look at where you're located, your individual county, and looking at just some of the dynamics. There are 2.4 million elderly and disabled in the state of Georgia. Those folks are depending on us, facilities, home, and everything. I'll yield for questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. That was very helpful. And again, all of this information is available to every member. I made a mistake earlier and I apologize. I was, once again, thank you, Tara. I was looking at the front of the agenda and failed to see the back. And we have some others here. And so Juliana, forgive me for that. We have a couple of ladies with the Georgia Association of Nursing Deans and Directors. And that is Dr. Little and Dr. Eichelberger.
Hi.
And Dr. Little first, right?
Yes.
And so
Dr.
thank you for
Sean
being
Little.
here.
Hi, thank you, Chairman and Committee. So this is when I kind of wish I'd had a minor in auctioneering so I could just whoop out the information really quick and get it to you. And I am going to say I've tore up half my speech because it was already said. So I'm just going to give you the highlights. I am the campus president for Chamberlain University School of Nursing in Atlanta. I'm also the secretary for the Georgia Association of Deans and Directors and part of the board for the Georgia Nurses Foundation. All of that to say, I'm here to talk about impact of schools. Schools are your pipeline. We're talking about shortages. We know there's shortages. There are budgetary impacts. Your schools are the ones that are creating the workforce and moving them forward within the state. There was a question earlier that the committee had. 80,407 qualified applicants were denied baccalaureate and graduate placements due to lack of faculty, lack of budget, lack of clinical space, and lack of preceptors. That is nationwide.
That's the figure I was looking to. That's a national figure.
National
Okay, thank you.
figure. Now, within the state of Georgia, according to the Georgia Board of Nursing, there are over 100 faculty, right about 100, 115 faculty open positions that were posted for the 2021 fiscal year. That does not count 2022 budgets. The expansion planning of programs, KSU stated that they were already looking for an additional, based on just their expansion, 52 faculty positions. That's one institution. When you combine all of the institutions plus the new programs that have been approved within the state that aren't currently recruiting faculty, they're still looking for space. All of these additional programs, all of the expansion of the programs impact the ability of faculty. The Georgia Board of Nursing, which is here to protect us, protect our students, and ensure that we're meeting student outcomes, they have a couple rules that impact this. They're there for a reason. We absolutely respect and understand them, but it inhibits us. They've been brought forward a couple times where folks have already mentioned that the majority of faculty must be full-time. But let me give you the rest of that statute. It states at least 3/4 of those full-time faculty must have a graduate degree. Well, a graduate degree nurse baseline salary is $110,000. Faculty salary is $79,000. That's part of the disparity. And that is an associate professor. That's not even talking clinical faculty or based on instructor. In addition to that, the Board of Nursing rule also states that all full-time faculty members have to have at least a baccalaureate, but any faculty member with a baccalaureate must also be working toward an earned graduate degree. So you can have a baccalaureate prepared nurse faculty, but they have to be working on a master's or doctorate degree. And they also have to be supervised by another nurse who has a master's or a graduate degree. In addition to that, the majority have to be full-time. This is an issue because if I want to work at the bedside, which everybody has said we need folks to work at the bedside, I am a nurse, I want to maybe still be a staff nurse, but I also want to educate and I want to be a clinical instructor. So I can be an adjunct instructor or a part-time clinical faculty while working my job at the bedside. But the Georgia Board of Nursing does not recognize that as faculty that you can count in the required 1-to-20 ratio, one faculty to every 20 enrolled students. Does that make sense? So if I have 60 faculty, 20 of them are full-time, I can count those 20 faculty only toward my 1-to-20 ratio, even though I have all of these other faculty who are supporting my students. So that is a huge challenge within the university system, as well as the private institutions within the state. As coming from a private institution, we can pay a little bit more than our university system can, but we have the same impact and the same budgetary constraints. And this is throughout the state of Georgia. This is not one system. This is not one university. This is not one school. It is all of them that are impacting this. So as we bring new institutions, expand programs, you have to have faculty to teach the students. In addition to that, all of the faculty, some of the statistics we have heard, they're about from the age of 50 to 62. I am now officially in that range. And I'm just going to say at some point we're retiring, right? They're stating now, there are statistics that state 1/3 of those faculty will retire by 2025. If they can't get in new RNs into a master's or graduate degree program because of lack of faculty, now you've lost your faculty pipeline, which impacts your RN pipeline. So it is a multifaceted issue. And in order to be able to compensate and compete and create that workforce, we have to invest in our schools. You want solutions, right? That's what I keep hearing. Sorry, I hit my little thing here. I wanted to talk about budget and clinical sites. Clinical sites is the other issue here. So if you're talking about, one of the institutions today was talking about graduating 4,000 students, they have to go to clinical. Where are they going to go? Nursing units are shutting down. Students can't go to that facility, or they can't go to that unit. Or you have 40% of your staff that are travel nurses. They're not going to be training your new students. They're being trained themselves. So who are training your new students and where can they go? In a standard medical, surgical, day-to-day clinical rotation, it's already challenging to find that space. Now add in your specialties. So let's look at just pediatrics. If you have a pediatric clinical rotation, what pediatric facility do we have? We have CHOA. They're fantastic. They support all of the nursing schools within the state because the pediatric population, it's hard to find clinical rotations. So increase your school capacities all you want, enroll all of the students you want. Where are you going to train them? Where are you going to send them? So we have to think outside the box. We have to do simulation. We have to do virtual simulation. We have to really think, do they have to be at a hospital bedside with a registered nurse with a baccalaureate degree to teach them how to take care of a pediatric patient? Or can they go into a doctor's office? Can they go into a midwife's section? Can they go in other places outside of where we've traditionally taught nursing students? And until we get out of that box that we have boxed ourselves into, it's going to be a challenge to fix this. So a couple solutions: pay incentive for faculty across the board, allow more part-time options to help as part of that 1-20 Board of Nursing ratio. Look at the Board of Nursing. Again, they're fantastic. They do a great job protecting our students and ensuring that we have quality programs. We do not want to decrease the amount of quality programs. However, we do want to make sure that we can accommodate the students that are coming in and not limit admissions based on a 1-20 full-time ratio. The other thing that we want to look at is budgetary support. It's not only the institutions that need financial support. You heard the millions of dollars, but also the students that need financial support. There are bills out there and tuition reimbursements that are available, but it's not equitable within the state. Not all schools have access to the same monies that other schools do. So open that up across the board and make sure that students have the ability to have access to those tuition reimbursements. For example, House Bill 291 tuition equalization grant. It doesn't go for all schools within the state. If you look at pipelines and incentivize hospitals to, instead of paying for travel nurses, pay for students. If you give scholarships to nursing students instead of $275 an hour for a nurse, I am so in the wrong profession right now, $275 an hour for a nurse, you could pay for a couple students to get their whole degrees and then have a work contract with you at the end of that program. So if we can work as academic institutions with the hospitals within the state, they can help pay for the tuition reimbursement or even the federal tuition reimbursement that is available. I appreciate the time. Thank you so much. I hope that was quick and to the point.
That
Any
was
questions,
excellent.
I'm
Well
happy to
done.
answer.
And we need everybody to testify like that. We'd have been out of here early. That was fantastic. And by the way, we do have a question. I also want to say you raised a good point. You know, I would think that a nurse, a faculty member who is a nurse who is still working in the community at the bedside would be a better faculty member. I mean, I think that a
Agreed.
layperson would believe that to be true. So interesting. You may raise a lot of great points. We've got them all. We know who represents you guys, and I thank the world of her. And she will be bringing those proposals to us as well. Dr. Eichelberger, and then we're going to get a question first, Dr. Little. I'm sorry. And then we're going to go. Okay. Oh, just Gamble. Okay. Representative Gamble online. How do we, is he available? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I appreciate the comments that I've heard today, particularly from the gentleman that spoke from the home healthcare industry. And he made a comment about working with our career academies, and I certainly support that and think that's an important part of this. I looked at the Georgia Department of Education website, and in 2019-20 school year, in that school year, we had 5,097 students, high school students in the state that were enrolled in a healthcare science program. Now, that could be at a traditional high school, or that could be at a career academy, because I don't know the breakdown between the two, but nonetheless, the course is the same. And at the middle school level, we had 11,000 students enrolled in a healthcare science program. I know we're talking about nurses, But I do want to point out the fact that the first opportunity that we have to introduce our students to these opportunities, especially in healthcare, in the healthcare professions, is in our K-12 pipeline. And I spoke with the gentleman from the Board of Regents that spoke earlier about the Nexus degrees. And I think that that's a tremendous opportunity. We're also looking at that as we prepare healthcare science teachers to teach at the K-12 level, to teach these some 55,000 plus high school students, 11,000 middle school students. So I want to add that's an important part of what we look at here as we continue to build this pipeline and make sure that we're doing everything that we can. And I think it's also incumbent upon us, as legislators and those there in the audience from industry, to make sure that if we haven't pulled our car into that parking lot at that high school or that career academy and gone in there and taken that teacher and their classroom and their students underneath our wing and provided whatever it is they need, whether it's industry connections or whatever that might be, that we do that. So I just wanted to point that out. I've really enjoyed the comments made today, and that's really all I had to say.
Thank you, Representative Gamble. We've got a lot of work to do, but we've got some great ideas to begin. Thank you again, Dr. Little, Dr. Eichelberger, and then, I'm sorry. No, Representative Allen has a question.
Issues of instructors. We have to address the lack of practicum locations, which is a huge issue, and also funding. So I just wanted to point that out, that, as we continue to do our work, that there's not one string that we're going to be able to pull on to solve the problem. It's a very, very complex web. And I just wanted to say thank you for articulating it as well as you did, as quickly as you did. So thank you.
Okay. All right. Dr. Eichelberger, and then we will have Tom Bauer.
Okay, well, good afternoon. I am Lisa Eichelberger, and I am Dean Emerita of Clayton State University. I was there for 25 years. I was one of those nurse educators that retired in July. But I'm here today as the co-chair of the Georgia Nursing Leadership Coalition. And that is an organization that was formed 10 years ago to advance the recommendations of the Future of Nursing report that was published by the Institute of Medicine. And one of those recommendations was to collect nursing and advanced nursing workforce data collection. And we looked at that and adopted that recommendation and actually received over $400,000 worth of grant funding from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to advance a couple of recommendations. And that was one of the ones that we chose because of the state of data in Georgia about nursing workforce data collection. We looked at that and we realized that the state of what we knew about data, nursing data, was abysmal. And we knew something had to be done. So about 8 years ago, we started working on this project. And so we started looking at that, and we worked diligently for the past 8 years with the Board of Nursing and the Secretary of State's office to see what we could do to collect on a systematic way nursing workforce data. And we've made some strides, but there's still a long way to go. We created actually in 2018, we came to you all and asked you if you could help us with this. And we got the law changed. And I'm very excited to tell you that that has helped us tremendously because you charge the then Georgia Physician Workforce Board. You changed the name and you charged it with collecting and analyzing, not collecting, but analyzing workforce data for nurses. And so we have worked with, unfortunately, we were all very saddened at the recent passing of LaShawn Hughes. But she was very instrumental in working with us and with the Board of Nursing to begin collecting and analyzing this data within the newly created, formed Georgia Board of Healthcare Workforce. And so in 2019, they formed an advisory committee. And there's actually 7 of us, PhD prepared individuals who volunteer our time to work between the Board of Nursing and the Georgia Board of Healthcare Workforce. And we helped the Board of Nursing to revise the Georgia licensure survey for registered nurses. And we looked at the national minimum data set that is used across the country to ask questions for nurses. And we adopted that and revised the questionnaire for nurses that is sent out. We got a ruling twice now from the Attorney General's office if we could make that required of all nurses to fill out. They said no, it was going to take a change in the law as well to get nurses to require them to fill out all of that. So we don't have a very good response rate from nurses. So that is a handicap and a real challenge for us. But in 2019, we were able to, for the first time, as a result of the good work of the legislature and the change of the law and the cooperation of a couple of state agencies working together with our advisory committee, to come up with what I wanted to show you. Y'all can't see it, but I think you can see it, right? Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Okay, good. This is a dashboard, and this has always existed for physicians, dentists. Can you help me? Thank you. All right. This has existed for the other health professionals, but not for nursing until 2019, after we passed that law. Thank you very much. So I wanted to show you because it really is nice. While it's not perfect, and if we had the change in the law that would require nurses to fill out all of the data, it would give us a much better and much more complete information. Let me see if I can scroll down here. But every legislator and every individual can go to this and find out exactly how many nurses is working in their county. It's county by county. I can't see how to scroll here. Where is it? Are you seeing it? Why can't I see it? Well, you can't see it either. Good. Makes me feel better. You go to the top there for nurses.
I think in the interest of time, we may need
Yeah,
to
well,
just
anyway,
kind of abandon this.
It does
We've
there
got
for
more.
nurses, and it shows you, I don't have my PowerPoint with me that shows the nurses, but it allows you to go to every county in Georgia and shows where the nurses are by classification, by where they're LPN, RNs, APRNs, and it shows where they live in every county. So you can tell what your county has in terms of the classification of nurses. So that is a tremendous advancement for the nurses. The challenges we have, however, is we have an interstate compact. So I'm not sure whether Pat Horton went into that or not, but because a nurse is like a driver's license, some of our nurses have that multi-state license. So while if they live in Georgia, they may be working in other states. So that muddies the water for us. We don't really know. As I said, the response to the workforce surveys is not required. So for instance, we don't know, we know pretty much about gender, but we have no idea about the ethnic and racial makeup of our nursing workforce. We don't know where they work. We know where they live, but we don't know where they work. And so that's a tremendous barrier to us knowing what we need and where they're working. We don't know whether they are out of state working. And then the educational data, which Sean talked about. Our educational data, every school of nursing, it was required, and there are about 80 schools of nursing in the state. You heard Tristan Denley said 19 of them are in state schools. So that tells you that's only a small portion of what we have in the state. But the Board of Nursing knows a wealth, they have a wealth of knowledge about those schools of nursing. They know faculty anticipated retirements, age of the faculty vacancies, and the challenges they're facing. They are required to fill out a comprehensive annual report and turn it into the Board of Nursing. But because of lack of resources, they don't compile and disseminate an annual report every year. And so that data stays at the Board of Nursing, and we're not privy to that. So we've offered to help them to do that, but they are under-resourced, and really there's a wealth of information that we could glean from that. So I would challenge you and really ask that you look at ways to support the Board of Nursing in the work that they could do to give us how many nurses are graduating, how many are leaving, and how many nurse faculty could anticipate retiring, and what those vacancy rates are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Eichelberger. And I'm on health appropriations, and we have recently funded, Tara works with us there as well. We've done some funding for the Georgia healthcare workforce and the good work that they do. And we need to continue to look at that. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Thank you again. Mr. Bauer, you will be the last of the day. No way. We're not going to leave any man behind.
Good afternoon. I'm Tom Bauer with Leading Age Georgia. And Tara, you can stay seated because this is my technical presentation. I don't need any help with it. Leading Age Georgia is mostly nonprofit providers of everything from retirement communities to HUD, high-rise, assisted living, personal care, and home and community-based services, including adult day services. I'm going to make 3 quick points. One, I want to piggyback up on the recent and so we have a lot of problems with getting CNAs and everything in our facilities. And you've heard some of that, and you heard Mr. Lamb talking. We want to echo the fact that we need more nurse educators, and we need to pay them more so that they'll go into educating and because they can make more money otherwise in clinical. And then I want to mention something that really hadn't been made. It's been hinted at by, I think, GNA when they talked about safe staffing versus ratios, but we need for our regulations of our facilities to be a little bit both more creative and more flexible. The General Assembly passed Chairman Cooper's bill on the assisted living, a pretty major bill, and some of and I wish Representative LaHood had not had to leave because he's really up on this, but some of the rules went beyond the legislation, and they just don't respond to the realities of the fact that we have a nursing shortage. And for instance, an example that needs to be a nurse on every floor at all times. Well, most of our facilities, everybody goes up on, say, the first floor or whatever to eat. So there's not much point in not having that nurse stay down there on that floor. We've got another member that has 8 units per floor, but so basically they have very small floors. And he's probably going to have to go out of business if we don't have more flexibility. And we'd also like to see the department to be a little more creative and maybe in light of the nursing shortage, use telehealth when the normal nurse is on vacation from a facility. So just some creativity and some flexibility, and that's all we really wanted to share with the committee.
Tom, I would ask you to, if you're speaking to an issue, if the statute, if you're speaking to an issue with the floors, I know we did pass legislation on assisted living communities that increased nursing oversight. If you're talking about a department that is really going outside of the statute, that's an issue that I would hope that y'all would let us know, because that the rules are created by the departments. But they're based on a statute. So if you think the department is going too far, that's a legitimate issue we should investigate. Or it may be that maybe We just need to tweak bills sometimes, as you see us do all the time here. So let us know what we can do to
And I
help. We
think,
certainly,
and I don't want to speak for him, but I think Representative LaHood will be more than happy to
yeah.
put that on the table.
And John has alluded to it.
And educate you on that.
But legislative intent
Yeah.
is what we need to fall back
Right,
on.
yeah.
So thank you for your
Thank
comments.
you very much for your.
Thank you, sir. The community-based services, as well as our hospitals, our nursing homes, all of our different, every healthcare provider in the state are impacted by this. Thank you. Thanks to all of you for being here. I would, again, we welcome you to offer your ideas. You've done it today. We appreciate that. We welcome you to offer them in writing to any or all of us, or I would encourage you to offer them to the committee, to me, and I'll disseminate those, and every member can choose to pursue any effort that he thinks will be beneficial to solve this problem. Thank you all again, and hope you have a great evening.